if an artifact sitting in a collection could connect us directly to one of the most famous commando raids of World War II. This Raider stiletto belonged to a man named Joe Richard Bibby. Bibby wasn't simply a member of the Marine Raiders. He was one of the Marines who participated in the legendary Makin Island raid of August 17th and 18th, 1942. He would go on to fight on Guadalcanal and participate in one of the most grueling operations in Marine Raider history, Carlson's Long Patrol. And eventually his story would cross paths with another young Marine Raider named Merrell. Today we're going to follow the wartime journeys of these two Marines through the photographs, patches, personal artifacts, and even the words they left behind. I'm your host, Brandon, with Gung-Ho Military, and today we are going behind the artifacts to preserve the stories of two men who served with the legendary 2nd Marine Raider Battalion. Joe Richard Bibby was born on August 23, 1922 in Los Angeles, California. America's entry into World War II would soon change the course of his life. Just weeks after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, Bibby enlisted in the United States Marine Corps on December 29, 1941, entering the service from Dallas, Texas. After completing Marine Corps recruit training in San Diego, Bibby volunteered for something new, something experimental, something dangerous: the Marine Raiders. The Raiders were being developed as highly trained forces capable of carrying out raids, reconnaissance, and offensive operations in areas conventional forces might find difficult to reach. And the men volunteering for the Raiders understood exactly what that could mean. The 2nd Raider Battalion was commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Evans F. Carlson, whose approach emphasized aggressive small unit tactics, physical conditioning, and the concepts of Marines working together as tightly integrated teams. After Raider training, Bibby was assigned to Company A, 2nd Raider Battalion, and his introduction to combat would come during an operation that would become one of the most famous episodes in Marine Raider history, Makin Island. On August 17, 1942, approximately 222 Marines from the 2nd Raider Battalion went ashore on Bataratari in the Makin Atoll. The raiding force came from Companies A and B and was transported hundreds of miles into enemy territory aboard two submarines, the USS Nautilus and the USS Argonaut. Their mission included destroying Japanese installations, gathering intelligence, capturing prisoners, and creating confusion behind enemy lines. But almost immediately the operation became far more complicated than planned. Heavy surf made movement between the islands and submarines difficult. Japanese resistance was stronger than anticipated, and aircraft appeared overhead. And what was intended to be a rapid hit-and-run raid extended into a desperate fight to get the Raiders off the island. By August the 18th, the surviving Raiders were finally withdrawing. The operation was far from perfect, but the sight of American forces striking a Japanese-held island during the dark opening months of the Pacific War became an enormous morale boost back home. And among those Raiders was Joe Bibby. And this brings us back to the artifact sitting here in front of me. This is Joe Bibby's Raider stiletto and sheath, now preserved as part of my personal collection. Think about what an artifact like this represents. This isn't simply an old military knife. It belonged to a young Marine who volunteered for one of America's earliest special operations style organizations during World War II. The 2nd Raiders trained extensively for the close, aggressive style of combat they expected to encounter, including forced marches, small unit tactics, rubber boat operations, and knife fighting. When you hold an artifact like this, suddenly those black and white photographs aren't quite as distant. The history becomes tangible. Makin would not be Bibby's final operation. Soon the 2nd Raiders were headed for another name forever etched into Marine Corps history, Guadalcanal. In November 1942, Carlson's Raiders began what became known as Carlson's Long Patrol. From November 6th through December 4th, the 2nd Raiders operated deep behind Japanese lines on the canal. For weeks, they moved through some of the harshest terrain imaginable: jungle, mud, heat, disease, and limited supplies, and the constant threat of Japanese forces. Marine Corps historical accounts credit the Raiders with inflicting heavy losses during the patrol while suffering comparatively modest battle casualties. But disease, particularly malaria, took a severe toll on the battalion. Joe Bibby had gone from young Marine recruit to a veteran of Makin Island and Guadalcanal in a matter of months. But another chapter of this story was about to begin. Following the Guadalcanal campaign, Bibby's Raider service would eventually bring him into contact with newly arriving replacement, Louis Raymond, or Ray Merrell. Merrell was born December 11th, 1922 in Marshall, Missouri. He entered the Marine Corps in late 1942. In Ray's own later account, he recalled that the publicity surrounding the Marines fighting on Guadalcanal helped convince him that he wanted to become a Marine. He was accepted into the Corps on November 26, 1942, reported to San Diego for boot camp in December, and graduated in January 1943. After additional training, he traveled to New Caledonia and officially joined the Marine Raiders on April 2nd, 1943. It was there that two different Marine careers, Bibby's, which had already included Makin and Guadalcanal, and Merrell's, which was just beginning, intersected. And the two Marines struck up a friendship. Ray Merrell was assigned to Company H, 2nd Raider Battalion. His own combat experience would start with the invasion of Bougainville. And Ray carried one of the most recognizable American infantry weapons of World War II, the M1918A2 Browning Automatic Rifle, or BAR. Years later, Ray recalled that his squad operated with a mix of M1 rifles, machine guns, and the BAR that he personally carried. Bougainville was miserable. Fighting, rainfall turned positions into mud, foxholes filled with water. Maintaining defensive wire and moving equipment through the jungle became exhausting daily tasks, in addition to the ever-present threat of Japanese forces. Those experiences represented exactly what made fighting in the Pacific so brutal. Sometimes the environment itself seemed nearly as determined to defeat you as the enemy itself. The Marine Raiders would not survive as separate organizations for the duration of the war. In February 1944, the Raider organization was dissolved, and its experienced Marines were folded back into conventional Marine formations. Ray later recalled that he was assigned to the Regimental Weapons Company of the 4th Marines, 6th Marine Division. The Raider legacy, however, traveled with those men. The former Raider regiments played a major role in forming the reconstituted 4th Marines, which subsequently served at Emira, Guam, and Okinawa. In July 1944, Ray participated in the battle to recapture Guam. His role had changed. Instead of carrying the BAR, Ray was now serving with a crew operating a 37mm anti-tank gun. Ray remembered that when his unit reached shore, the water was so deep that the Marines physically had to pull their 37mm gun through the water toward the beach. Imagine that scene. Coming ashore under wartime conditions while hauling an anti-tank gun through the surf. The former Marine Raider, it was simple. Another chapter in a war that had already taken him thousands of miles from Missouri. Next came Okinawa. The battle began on April 1st, 1945, April Fool's Day, and developed into one of the bloodiest campaigns of the Pacific War. Ray was there with the 6th Marine Division. During the campaign, Merrell recalled carrying roughly 50 to 60 pounds of explosives used during operations against Japanese Cape positions. From Bougainville to Guam to Okinawa, Ray Merrell had now traveled an extraordinary distance from the young Missouri Marine who arrived at boot camp in December of 1942. And yet his wartime story survived in another unusual way. Years later, Ray preserved his memories in a book entitled My 3 Years in the Marine Corps. Published by Leathers Publishing, the book combines diary material, letters home, and personal recollections describing Ray's experiences as a Marine Raider and Marine serving throughout the Pacific. And I am fortunate to have here in my collection photographs, Raider patches, and other items associated with Ray's service, along with a copy of his book. And here are some of the photos, Raider patches, and so on. And then I've got a copy of Ray's book that he signed, which I'm pleased to have. But these objects give us something history books sometimes can't: the personal perspective. Not merely where a battalion went, but what one Marine remembered about being there. And that's what makes these artifacts so important to me. On one side, we have Joe Bibby, a Marine who enlisted shortly after Pearl Harbor, a member of the 2nd Marine Raider Battalion, and a participant in the Makin Island raid, a veteran of Guadalcanal and Carlson's Long Patrol. And here his Raider stiletto remains as a tangible connection to history. On the other side is Ray Merrell, a replacement Raider who joined the battalion in 1943, a BAR man on Bougainville, later a member of the 4th Marines who served with a 37mm anti-tank gun crew on Guam, and he continued that fight through the Okinawa campaign. We have 2 Marines whose paths crossed during World War II. 2 stories preserved through photographs, patches, a knife, and a book. And nearly 8 decades later, those artifacts still allow their stories to be told. It is for this reason we collectors seek out historical artifacts, not simply because the objects are rare, but because every artifact once belonged to someone, and every artifact has a story. If you enjoyed learning about Marine Raiders Joe Bibby and Ray Merrell, hit the like button, subscribe to Gung-Ho Military, and be sure to turn on notifications, because there are many more artifacts and many more veterans' stories still waiting to be told. And as always, we're not just collecting history, we're preserving it. Until next time, I'll catch you guys later, and Semper Fi.